The council chamber filled with sound again, but this time the words were sharper. They cut through the air like thin blades. Some voices were loud and proud. Others were quiet but heavy with warning. Together, they formed a wall of judgment that pressed inward toward the human delegation. Jessica stood in the center platform, still and calm. Her face showed no anger. Her hands did not shake. She looked like someone waiting for a storm to pass, not someone afraid of it. On the human balcony, Michael Grant activated a small display panel. Lines of light formed old star maps, layered one over another. These were not the maps shown to the council. These were older. Some were marked with faded dates and forgotten names. David Ross leaned closer, his brow tight with focus. "They never show these," he said quietly. Michael nodded. "They don't want to remember." Across from them, Emily Turner and Lauren Brooks listened to the council's words instead of the data. Emily's eyes moved from speaker to speaker. She studied tone, pauses, and the way some council members avoided looking at the human section. Lauren folded her hands, calm on the surface but alert. She had learned long ago that silence often hid fear. One council member spoke about human ships. He claimed humans copied designs from others and improved only because they stole ideas. Another said humans survived early wars by hiding behind stronger allies. A third laughed and said humans were lucky to still exist at all. Jessica remained silent. Every insult was recorded. Every lie was noted. She let them pile up, one after another, like stones stacked too high. Above the chamber the screens changed again. Human space was outlined in pale light. Symbols appeared beside each world. Weak, vulnerable, dependent. The marks pulsed slowly as if breathing. The council leader watched the display with clear satisfaction. He believed the room already agreed with him. He believed the vote was only a formality. James watched the screens with tight fists. Daniel stood beside him, unmoving, his eyes fixed on Jessica. Neither spoke. They knew this part of the process well. Humans had been underestimated many times before. It always began like this. Jessica shifted her weight slightly, then became still again. She looked up at the screens not with fear but with focus. She recognized worlds where humans had starved and rebuilt. Worlds where they had stayed after others fled. Worlds that existed only because someone had chosen to hold the line. The council continued. One speaker said humans lacked discipline. Another said they were too emotional to be trusted with responsibility. A third warned that humans, if left free, would grow too fast and upset the balance of power. Jessica did not defend herself. Michael switched the map view again. This time, faint lines appeared connecting human systems to council worlds. Supply routes. Evacuation paths. Defense grids. David's eyes widened slightly. "They forgot who built half of this," David said. "They didn't forget," Michael replied. "They chose not to remember." Emily listened to a council member describe a past conflict where humans had arrived late. The speaker called it proof of human unreliability. Emily knew the truth. Humans had arrived late because they had stopped to rescue civilian ships from another system. That detail had been erased from official records. Lauren noticed something else. Some council members avoided speaking at all. They sat back watching Jessica carefully. Not with anger but with uncertainty. The insults kept coming. Jessica felt the weight of them but she did not let it show. She understood something the council did not. Loud judgment often came from fear. And fear made people careless. The council leader raised his hand, signaling the chamber to quiet. He spoke about order. About safety. About the need to guide weaker powers for the good of all. His words were smooth and practiced. He announced that the council would soon vote on humanity's status. Protection or control. Observer or subject. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, signaling the end of open debate. Council members leaned toward one another, whispering. Some glanced at the human balcony. Others did not bother. Jessica was finally given the chance to respond. She did not move right away. The silence stretched. James held his breath. Daniel's jaw tightened. Michael stopped adjusting the maps. Emily and Lauren lifted their heads. Jessica looked slowly around the chamber. She met the eyes of those who stared openly and those who tried not to look at her at all. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. She said the council was correct about one thing. Humans had survived against impossible odds. She agreed that humans learned from others. She said learning was not theft, but respect for survival. The chamber shifted. Some council members frowned. Jessica continued. She said luck helped everyone, but luck alone did not build worlds or protect trade routes or stand between empires when war threatened to spread. She did not accuse anyone. She did not raise her voice. She spoke simply. She said humans stayed. She said humans remembered. She said humans listened when others were too busy fighting. She stopped there. No grand speech. No challenge. Just truth placed gently in the center of the room. The council leader stared at her, unsure how to respond. He had expected anger. He had expected fear. He had not expected patience. The screen still showed human worlds marked as fragile. But now, some council members looked at those symbols differently. The vote was not called yet. The chamber remained tense, heavy with unfinished judgment. Jessica stepped back into silence, letting her words settle. The council believed the outcome was certain. They were wrong. But they did not know it yet. The galaxy believed strength was loud and cruel. Most powers ruled by fear, by fleets that filled the sky and weapons that burned worlds into silence. In that galaxy, quiet people were ignored. Gentle voices were seen as signs of weakness. This belief had lasted for centuries and no one questioned it anymore. In the outer systems, far from the bright core worlds, the human union made a choice that confused many. They did not send a general, an admiral, or a warrior covered in medals to the Interstellar Council. Instead, they sent Jessica Hale. Jessica arrived alone on a small transport ship. It carried no weapons strong enough to frighten anyone. The ship docked at the Great Council Station, a structure so large it blocked out the stars. Jessica stepped onto the platform wearing a simple uniform. It was clean, gray, and unmarked by rank. Her hands were empty. Her face was calm. Many eyes watched her. Some of the council members whispered among themselves. They were tall, armored, scaled, or wrapped in glowing robes. Their own representatives stood behind them in tight formations. Compared to them, Jessica looked small. She did not carry guards. She did not wear symbols of power. She is weak, some of them thought. She is only an observer, others said aloud, not caring if humans heard. Jessica heard everything. She did not react. She had trained for this moment for many years. She knew silence could speak louder than anger if used at the right time. From the human delegation balcony, James Carter leaned forward. His hands rested on the railing, fingers tight. He had served in conflicts most of the council pretended never happened. His hair was already gray even though he was not old. He trusted Jessica more than any weapon. Beside him stood Daniel Reed. Daniel looked younger but his eyes carried the same weight. He remembered why Jessica had been chosen. Not because she could fight but because she could remember. She remembered names, worlds, and promises broken by the same council that now judged them. The council chamber was vast. Light flowed across its walls like slow water. At the center floated a circular platform where speakers stood. Around it, the council seats rose like steps of a throne built for many rulers. Above them all, screens showed star maps and symbols of every known power. Jessica stood on the platform when called. Her name echoed through the chamber, spoken without respect or warmth. She did not correct their tone. One council member spoke first. His voice was sharp and loud. He talked about human expansion, about human survival through chance. He said humans copied others and learned only because they were allowed to. Another spoke next, saying humans were fragile, emotional, and dangerous when cornered. Jessica listened. More voices followed. Some accused humans of hiding behind larger powers. Others claimed humans would one day need to be controlled for the safety of the galaxy. Each word added weight to the air. Jessica did not interrupt. James felt anger rise in his chest. Daniel clenched his jaw. They knew these words were not new. Humans had heard them before, in different rooms on different worlds. What made this moment dangerous was not the insults but the reason for them. The council was not only speaking. They were preparing to decide. Above the chamber, the star maps shifted. Human worlds were highlighted in pale colors. Next to them appeared symbols meaning fragile, unstable, and under observation. It was not a threat yet, but it was close. Jessica looked up at the maps. Her eyes moved slowly, calmly. She recognized every system. She remembered what each one had cost. The council leader finally addressed her directly. His voice was smooth but cold. He asked why humans believed they deserved protection instead of control. He asked what value humans brought that could not be replaced. The chamber grew quiet. Jessica took a breath. She did not answer right away. She let the silence stretch, uncomfortable and heavy. Many council members shifted in their seats. They were not used to waiting. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. She said humans did not ask for protection. She said they came only to observe and listen. She reminded the council that strength did not always shout. Sometimes it stood still and remembered. Some council members laughed quietly. Others frowned. Jessica did not react to them either. She spoke of patience, of watching empires rise and fall. She did not accuse. She did not threaten. She only spoke of memory. She said humans remembered who helped them and who turned away. They remembered debts but also mercy. James felt the room change just a little. Daniel noticed it too. The insults slowed. The council members listened even if they did not yet agree. Jessica finished her short statement and stepped back. She did not ask for applause. She did not defend herself further. She knew this was only the beginning. The council leader announced that deliberation would continue. The decision about humanity's status would be made soon. Protection or control. Partner or subject. Jessica returned to the human delegation without looking back. James met her eyes and nodded once. Daniel did the same. No words were needed. They all understood the risk. As the chamber lights dimmed and the council withdrew, the galaxy moved closer to a choice it did not fully understand. Jessica stood quietly, hands folded, waiting. She had time. She always had. When Jessica finally spoke again, the chamber changed. It was not sudden like a shock. It was slow like air being pulled from a room. Voices faded. Even the quiet movements stopped. The Interstellar Council, so used to hearing itself speak, fell silent. Jessica did not raise her voice. She did not point or accuse. She stood straight and calm, her hands relaxed at her sides. Her eyes moved across the chamber, not searching for approval but measuring attention. She began with a story. She spoke of a border war long removed from public records. Two great powers had clashed over a trade route that cut through empty space. Their fleets gathered, weapons charged, ready to burn everything between them. Smaller worlds lay in the path of that war, unable to flee. Jessica said humans were there. Not as conquerors. Not as heroes. They were there because the route passed near a human colony. A young one. Weak by council standards. She told how human ships moved into the gap between the fleets. How they did not fire first. How they did not leave. They stayed, knowing both sides had the power to erase them. The chamber remained silent. Jessica spoke of another war. This one was never named in council halls. It ended quietly without victory songs. Two empires stepped back at the same time and later claimed it was diplomacy. Jessica explained what the records did not show. Humans had held the line for 3 days. No orders. No demands. They stood between fleets and refused to move. Some council members shifted in their seats. As Jessica spoke, the walls of the chamber began to glow. At first it was faint. A soft red light traced thin lines along the curved walls and floor. The council noticed it but did not panic. The chamber often changed colors during sessions. But this red was different. Michael saw it first from the human balcony. His breath caught. "It's waking up," he whispered. David leaned closer, eyes wide. They never disabled it. Emily felt a slow chill move through her arms. Lauren's hands tightened together, but her face stayed calm. The red light spread. Panels that had been decorative for centuries shifted. Lines of energy appeared, forming shapes no one remembered installing. Symbols flickered into view, old and worn, hidden beneath newer designs. Jessica kept speaking. She told of evacuation corridors opened during plagues. Of defense grids activated without announcement. Of weapons that never fired because their presence was enough. The red light deepened, steady and controlled. Council members began to murmur. Some stood. Others demanded explanations. The council leader raised his voice, calling for order, but his words sounded thin. Jessica did not stop. She spoke of sharing. How humans, when they built defenses, shared the designs freely. Not as gifts for power but as insurance. She said humans believed survival was stronger when shared. The red light reached the ceiling. John stepped forward from the human delegation. He activated a data projection. Ashley joined him, her movements precise and calm. Records filled the air. Dates. Coordinates. Events labeled unknown intervention. John spoke clearly. He showed proof of defense systems activating during attacks on council worlds. Systems that were never claimed. Systems that saved lives then went silent. Ashley showed logs. Human signatures buried deep in old code. Maintenance updates sent quietly year after year. No payment. No recognition. Gasps echoed through the chamber. One council member shouted that this was impossible. Another demanded to know why this had never been reported. Jessica answered softly. She said humans were taught that saving someone did not require permission. The red light pulsed once. Not a warning. A confirmation. The council leader's face had gone pale. He looked up at the glowing walls, then at the records floating around him. His voice trembled as he asked how long these systems had been active. Michael answered from the balcony. Since before this chamber was finished. Silence crashed down. Jessica took a small step forward. She said the red light did not mean danger. It never had. It meant readiness. It meant someone was watching when others slept. She said humans had guarded trade routes, evacuation lanes, and council space itself. Quietly. Patiently. For generations. The chamber shook slightly as another layer of systems came fully online. Not weapons. Shields. Barriers. Support arrays. The color remained red. A council member whispered, "They've been protecting us." Jessica nodded once. She said humans were called weak because they did not boast. Because they did not claim victories. Because they did not demand seats of power. She said humans chose restraint. James felt something heavy lift from his chest. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the truth settle. The council leader lowered himself into his seat. His authority felt smaller now, pressed under the weight of history he had ignored. Jessica finished her final story. She spoke of the chamber itself. How, during its construction, human engineers had offered help. How they built the first layer of defense deep into the structure. How it was designed to protect everyone inside, no matter who sat in power. The red glow softened, steady and calm. Jessica fell silent. No one spoke. The truth hung in the air, clear and unavoidable. Humans had never been weak. They had been careful. They had been watching. They had been guarding the chamber all along. Fear moved through the council chamber like a cold wind. It did not rush. It spread slowly, touching every seat, every mind. Some council members stood in alarm. Others froze where they sat. A few reached for control panels that did nothing. The red light remained steady, calm and silent. It did not attack. That frightened them more than any weapon. Jessica stayed where she was. She did not step back. She did not raise her hands. She did not offer comfort or threat. She simply waited, giving the council time to feel what they had never allowed themselves to feel before. Understanding. One council member finally spoke, his voice shaking. He asked where the systems came from. He demanded to know how they had been hidden so completely. Jessica answered without pride. She said the designs were old. Very old. Older than many of the seals now covering them. Humans had placed their marks deep inside the structure, beneath layers built later by others. Not to hide ownership, but to keep the systems safe from politics. Michael brought up another display. He showed design signatures, simple and clean. No empire marks. No flags. Only human engineering patterns, familiar to those who knew what to look for. David pointed to a section of the wall glowing brighter than the rest. That shield saved your capital world during the third collapse, he said. You thought it was a solar event. Murmurs filled the chamber. Emily stepped forward next. She spoke softly but clearly. She reminded the council of a famine stopped by sudden supply routes opening without warning. Of refugee fleets that found clear paths through mind space. Of signals that appeared just in time. Lauren added that humans never claimed credit because credit changed motives. Saving lives should not require applause. The council members looked at one another. Faces once hard with judgment now showed doubt, then shame. Some lowered their eyes. Jessica spoke again. She said humans never needed praise. They never waited for thanks. They stayed because someone had to stay when others left. She said humans learned early that leaving was easy. Staying was the real test. The red light did not change. It remained steady like a held breath. One council member asked why humans accepted being called weak. Why they allowed lies to spread. Jessica answered simply. She said arguing every insult wasted time. Time was better spent building things that lasted. The council leader stood slowly. His voice was quieter now. He admitted that the council had confused silence with fear. He said they mistook patience for helplessness. Jessica nodded once. She did not agree or disagree. She let the truth speak for itself. The council reviewed more records. Systems marked with unknown origins now carried human design logic. Defense arrays designed to block, not destroy. Power flows balanced to protect civilians first. Nothing about them was aggressive. That was what unsettled the council most. These systems were not built to win wars. They were built to prevent them. The red glow continued to bathe the chamber. Felt different now. Not like danger. Like shelter. James watched the council's faces change. He had seen this moment before on smaller scales. The moment when fear turned into respect. When understanding replaced pride. Daniel exhaled slowly. The tension he had carried for hours eased. A council member asked if the systems could be shut down. Jessica answered that they could. But she asked why they would want that. No one replied. The silence that followed was not hostile. It was thoughtful. Jessica said the systems waited. They always waited. They watched for harm, not disagreement. They activated only when life was at risk. She said humans designed them to be patient. The council leader lowered his head. He admitted that the council had prepared to control humanity out of fear of the unknown. He admitted they had been wrong. The red light dimmed slightly, not in response to his words, but because no threat remained. Jessica did not smile. She did not claim victory. She stood as she always had, calm and steady. The council chamber remained red, but now it felt safe. Controlled. Waiting. Not threatening. The council had learned something it could not unlearn. What they had called weakness was restraint. And restraint, they now understood, was strength of the highest kind. The vote was never called. The council leader stood at the center of the chamber, his hands resting on the edge of his platform. For a long moment he said nothing. The red light still filled the room, steady and calm, like a silent witness. Finally he spoke, and his voice carried none of its earlier pride. The motion to decide humanity's status was withdrawn. A quiet sound passed through the chamber. It was not anger. It was relief. Council members began to speak again, but their words had changed. They no longer argued about control or weakness. They spoke about correction, about responsibility, about truth. Old records were opened. New entries were written. Labels once placed on human space were removed, one by one. Minor ally was erased. Unstable was deleted. In its place appeared new words chosen carefully. Quiet defenders of balance. Jessica watched without expression. She did not lean forward. She did not nod in approval. This outcome was not a victory to her. It was simply accuracy returning to the record. James stood beside her, his shoulders finally relaxed. He had waited a long time to see this room change its tone. Daniel glanced at the council displays, then away as if closing a chapter in his mind. Michael and David confirmed the updates, checking that the changes were permanent. Emily and Lauren watched the council members closely. There was no deception left in the room. Only tired honesty. The red glow slowly faded from the walls, not shutting down but settling back into rest. The chamber lights returned to their normal color. No alarms sounded. No systems powered down fully. They simply waited again as they always had. The council leader formally acknowledged Jessica. His words were respectful but careful. He thanked her for clarity, not for power. He said the council would remember this moment. Jessica replied with a simple statement. She said memory mattered more than promises. With that, the session ended. Jessica turned and walked away from the center platform. No music played. No crowd applauded. She returned to the human delegation as she had arrived, calm and unmarked by ceremony. James walked beside her. Daniel followed. The others joined them quietly. As they moved through the long corridor away from the chamber, none of them spoke at first. The station felt different now. Lighter somehow. Or maybe they were simply no longer carrying the same weight. James finally broke the silence. He said, "They'll talk about this for years." Jessica answered, "They'll forget parts of it." Daniel nodded. "They always do." Jessica did not slow her pace. She said that forgetting was normal. What mattered was what stayed behind, built into systems and choices. Their ship waited in the docking bay, small and plain among larger vessels. No guards stopped them. No officials followed. The council had no need to watch them now. As the ship pulled away from the station, the council chamber remained behind, quiet and intact. The systems beneath its walls stayed alert, unseen once more. Across the stars, information moved faster than ships. Reports spread through trade routes and communication nets. At first they were careful and unclear. Then they became stories. Then whispers. People said the council chamber had turned red. People said humans had built it that way. People said humans had been there all along. The story changed as it traveled. Some said humans were saviors. Others said guardians. Humans themselves said very little. On distant worlds, officials reviewed old logs and found human signatures where they had never looked before. On trade routes, captains spoke quietly about how certain paths always seemed safe. On border systems, old warnings were reread with new understanding. Humans were not loud. They did not arrive with threats. They stayed. Jessica filed her final report days later. It was short. It contained no praise and no demands. She listed facts, corrected errors, and closed the record. Then she returned to work. The galaxy moved on as it always did. Empires argued. Councils debated. Conflicts threatened and faded. But something had changed. When danger rose near council space, systems responded smoothly. When evacuation routes were needed, they opened. When the chamber turned red again, no panic followed. Because now they knew. Humans were not weak. They were careful. And when the chamber turned red, it was not a warning of fear. It was proof that humanity was already there.